To your point of your customers not really who you think they are, I mistakenly thought our customers were going to be sailors. Like everyone was going to be a sailor that bought our bags. Well, sailors notoriously don't have, don't spend the money on things like that. So they would go for the yellow bean tote at half the price. And so I was wrong on that. And then, we quickly found out, that our buyers were women that appreciated handmade and the unique design in every single tote because of the sale that it came from.
Hi, and welcome to Handbag Designer 101, the podcast with your host, Emily Blumenthal, handbag industry expert and the handbag fairy godmother. Each week, we uncover the stories behind the handbags we love, from the iconic brands and top designers to the creativity, craftsmanship, and culture that define the handbag world. Whether you're a designer, collector, or simply passionate about handbags, this is your front row seat to it all. So welcome, Beth Greenlaw of Sea Bags Maine, to Handbag Designer 101, the podcast. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I love when ongoing publicists / friends of mine tell me that they have a client that is deserved of attention and has a story behind it. So I love your brand. We have a sample, or we have one. I don't even want to call it a sample because samples predate actual sales. But why don't you the ditty about Beth and where you're from? And we don't even need to get into the sea bags, but what's your origin story? And then we can work our way up, because what I love our listeners to know is, and this is also what I teach, to become an entrepreneur or a business owner. It's not a linear journey. And there's a lot of things that happen before we get to Sea Bags Maine. Before it's like, oh, who knew we could make a bag, and who knew it could be a business? So Beth, welcome. What's your story though? No pressure.
So thank you, Emily. So excited to be here. And I'm glad you said it's not a linear journey, because as far as I know, nobody ever grew up saying, I want to make handbags out of recycled sails from sailboats, right? So it definitely was not a straight path for me by any means. But I was born and raised in Maine and went to school in Ohio for business. And at the time where I graduated, there just weren't a lot of jobs in Maine. So I ended up living in many different places, doing the corporate thing in semiconductors and wiring cable. Definitely had no idea how to sew, idea how to make a tote bag. But
wait a second. So you said day job. So you finished, you had a degree, business. And it's so funny, like having a kid in college now, the landscape. And when you say, oh, you got a degree, it's like, oh, good for you. Good job. Well done. But how did you end up, like, did you want to go back to Maine where you're like, oh, that's it. I'm going. So you were like, that's it. I'm going back to Maine. I'm going to find something to do, because I'm sure going back, you knew it would be kind of limiting in terms of what you could do going back, right?
100%. So at the point where I wanted to come back, I was in semiconductors and I was traveling overseas doing a ton of long haul travel. And I wanted to be home, and I wanted to have a family, and none of that was really possible with the job that I had. But there weren't a lot of jobs as lucrative or as exciting as the one I had. So I thought, why not do a startup? So
wait a second. How did you end up in semiconductors? Because as someone who graduates, it's like the most sexy thing I want to do, semiconductors, top of my list. Like, was that like, okay, I've moved home. This is a good job. It pays a lot of money and I get to be home. Like, how did you end up in semiconductors?
yeah, I mean, it just started from corporate gig to corporate gig. My specialty was business to business sales, and it was all industrial. I mean, there weren't a ton of women in semiconductors at that time, but it offered me an opportunity to do some international travel, which I thought I wanted to do and I did for a bit. But then it was time to come home, and there just weren't a ton of opportunities. So, and I loved the company I worked for. I loved what I did, but I wanted to be home. So,
Right.
so it really
Right.
just morphed, job after job, corporate to corporate.
Where were you living with the semiconductor job?
Well, I started outside of Boston, and my boss I had one boss in San Francisco and one in Munich, and customers in Shanghai and Canada.
So you were like boppity bopping, like,
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
That so you were leading the fabulous life of as a new college graduate because you were traveling
Yeah, it was a little further in my
and you
career.
were
I think I
making
must
money,
have been like,
even though it wasn't a sexy business.
yeah, I think it was about 27 by the time I went on to that international job. So before that, it was, more domestic, but same idea, traveling corporate sales. So yeah.
Right, right. So, I mean, the interesting thing is about corporate sales, especially traveling on somebody else's dollar, you learn a lot of and these are hard lessons like how to present yourself, how to sell, how to listen, and especially something that isn't so sexy. You have to sell into, really, really be aware of what people are looking for before you can make a pitch. I mean, it's not like you can make something about the product you're selling. So I'm sure that, it's not like it's not like PR, or sorry, your publicist is listening, but it's not like it's anything that you can glorify. Like you have to be very specific, black and white, like here's what you need, here's what we've got, and you have to be really locked in on your numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really about knowing your differentiators and how to offer what your competitors couldn't, right? And so, and it was a lot of relationship management too, but that was a foundation that helped me understand the whole sales process. And it's so funny, so many entrepreneurs when they come in, they say, I don't want to be corporate. Well, if I didn't have my corporate background, 20 years later, I wouldn't still be here, right? So it definitely helped me build a foundation.
Well, I think it also helps you know that when you're working corporate, you're this. And there's so much that you need to know and be ready to present. So if money is spent, that it's going to something, it's leading to something. Because I deal with so many designers and we talk about this a lot, but the most organized, the most logical people, when they get an idea that is not logical, not black and white, all that like training and mindset is just goes out the window, and then they go with the feeling, and then they're like, that's it, I'm all in, I'm all in. Like, okay, my day job I knew exactly what I was doing, but for this I don't know what I'm doing at all, but I'm going to spend this money and I'm going to design this bag.
But you're totally right on that. And then when I told my peers in my semiconductor world, like, hey, I'm going to, I'm leaving the company, I'm starting this business, not even just my peers, my parents thought I was nuts. My family thought I was nuts. And you get caught up in the excitement and the glory of it all, but down deep, you still have your roots of, okay, I need a sales budget and I need to make more revenue than I spend. And how do you do that? So, but yeah, you do get a lot of, or I had at least a lot of, stars in my eyes and we're going to launch this thing and it's going to be amazing. Right. So,
Okay, so that's it, you go back to Maine. How did you come up with this construct of like, it would be awesome? Let's use, because I got to tell you, I know there are businesses where they take leftover ads that people use like outdoor advertising, and then they turn those into bags. And there's a lot of things that people take that aren't necessarily garbage or could be recycled materials that then be like, hold on a second, I'm going to turn this into a bag. And how did you come to this conclusion? Because understanding how handbags work, and how bags don't sell unless they stand up, and understanding the anatomy of a woman and carrying, and wouldn't it be cute if we had rope as our handle, or is that too on the nose? And talk a little bit about all that.
yeah. So there was a woman down on the fishing docks here where we're originating, where I'm sitting today. And she was doing it as kind of a hobby business. And her dad was a sailor and taught her how to make this. So the bag design was really their idea. The rope handles, it's a continued splice loop. That's been around forever. It's how they carried ice aboard fishing boats 100 years ago. So the rope handle carrying for strength is something that's been around for a while. But using a recycled sail was, new. And so she was doing, very few in quantity, but I approached her and said, "Oh my God, this is amazing. What do you think? Did you ever think about growing? Would we, could we, should we?" And I say we dated for about 6 months before we decided to kind of turn it into a company. But we agreed on, what I call our North Stars early on. And it was, we're going to keep it made here because, all the sewing jobs had gone offshore. And I, in fact, And my relatives worked for a shirt factory, Hathaway shirt factory in Maine, forever. And all those jobs left, and all the shoe factories in Maine were going overseas. I was like, so we're going to bring cut and sew back. This is my romantic idea. Like, we're going to bring it back and we're going to keep it green and product and practice. We're going to be sustainable. And that was before sustainable was a trend. I mean, this was like, we are going to recycle this material and keep it from the landfill. And then mostly this was my own preference is I wanted to be good stewards to our community and give back a lot to the community because I didn't feel grounded. Even though I lived here, I was traveling all the time. So I just wanted to get grounded. So those are the things we agreed on the onset. And we still use those to this day to kind of guide us. But it started with, somebody making a literal handful of bags a year saying, how could we scale this? How could we grow it?
But this is so interesting. So you basically, for lack of a better word, hit on someone being like, I like what you've got. Hey, lady, let's chat.
Yeah.
How did you know? I mean, respect. How, because, honestly, Beth, if you and she did not jive, then this concept for you wouldn't have worked. So I so appreciate you saying that you dated before, like committing. Like, was she down? Was she like, no? Especially, it's there's so many people who are either content with their craft fair pop-up lifestyle because it's cute. They could do it, they sell a few, they go home. It's nice. Like that's what they're known for. And then there are those who have, and I don't want to say delusions of grandeur, but there are so many of them who have something and they're really expensive and they're like, they're going to stay this and we're going to grow and we're going to be the best thing that ever happened to anybody. So, how did you know that you'd be a good fit with her or she'd be a good fit with you? I mean, that's huge.
We didn't because we didn't really know each other. And so, and I'm glad you're asking this because again, people want a partner all the time. Partnerships are hard. And so, we found out, kind of our first day, and I, just left my big corporate gig. And I said, okay, I'll see you tomorrow morning. And, she was the artsy one and she made the best bag of anybody I've ever known, probably still to this day, right? I could have something in my head and, she would say, oh, I'll be back in 10 minutes. And she would have created it, right? One, not scale, but one. But so she was the creative one, and I was more of the business mind, but I'm a good shopper too, right? And so that's what I brought to it. But it started the first day where I said, I'll see you tomorrow morning. Well, for me, that was 7:45, and for her, that was like 11, right? So, so we had to maneuver that for a while. And we did that for about 6 years before she said, you know what, this is amazing. I love the growth we've had, but this day-to-day thing isn't for me. How do you feel about kind of buying me out? And so we went through that for 6 years, and yeah, we're still very dear friends to this day. And we were able to make that work. But yeah, you don't know what you're getting into with a partner. And we were lucky that we respected what the other one brought to the party and, kind of finessed it and made it work.
Can I just ask you when you said 7:45, did you show up someplace at 7:45 and she was not? And where did you show up? Like her
Toy little work,
house?
now toy little workshop that we have down here on the fishing docks.
So you
I was
met her
like,
and you're like, hey girl, I meet you here tomorrow. And she's like, okay, great. So you're there early, dressed up, still in corporate clothes, because that's your mind. And you sat there for 3 hours and she
well, it's just a miscommunication. Like we were both there tomorrow morning. Yeah. It was just a miscommunication. We were both there tomorrow morning in our mind, right? And I was like, oh, okay. And we both realized that. And she was like, at that point, she was probably like, holy cow, what did I get into? And I was thinking, like, holy cow, what did I get into? Right. So, but yeah. So, but that's the best example I have of like not knowing your partner, right? So everything can be good on paper, but you just don't know each other personally. So,
did you know to draw up contract or have a
yes.
deal between the two of you 6 months before you did immediately? You were like, that's it, the whole thing.
Yeah, because I wanted to create a company and not just a company. I wanted to create a brand. So I met with an attorney and said, how do we do this, right? And I'm sure, like in your entrepreneurial classes, you probably teach this, right? But I didn't know, so I had to, hire people to, teach me through like how do you set up a company and how do you register with the state and what do you mean sales tax? And so with that came up with women. So
So those first 6 years, was there ever, in your head that you knew that at some point she would be out? Do you think that was imminent?
I don't think so. I think, we both went into this, knowing that we wanted to take the company and grow it. I think there were my version of growth because of my career might have been a little different than hers, and I knew so early on we talked about, how many bags do we need to make to create jobs? Because that was a huge thing for me is to create jobs here. And everybody have kind of a decent living. And then I went back and I said, holy smokes, I'm going to be bored stiff if that's what we do. So I wanted a little bit more of the thrill of the build than she did. And so, and we talked about it a long time along the way, and she came to me early on and said, or not early on, but well before we ended up doing a buyout, and said, I'm thinking I want to jump off the train, and what does that look like? And so we had to create a path to do that because at that point I couldn't afford to buy her out. And
Right.
so we had to think about what does that mean? So it took us about a year and a half to find the right opportunity for her to exit.
If you ever wanted to start a handbag line and didn't know where to start, this is for you.
Living proof that independent designers can make it big.
Emily Blumenthal is one prime example.
If you had dreams of becoming a handbag designer and didn't know where to start, this is for you. If you have a handbag brand and are in need of strategy and direction, this is for you. I'm Emily Blumenthal, handbag fairy godmother and handbag designer expert, and this is Handbag Designer 101, the masterclass. Over the next 10 classes, I will break down everything you need to know how to make, market, and manufacture a handbag. Broken down for you that you'll not only skip steps in that handbag building process, but also save money in that learning curve. For the past 20 years, I've been teaching at the top fashion universities in New York City, created the Handbag Awards, and also the Handbag Designer 101 podcast. I'm going to show you like I have countless brands from sketch to sample to shelf, whether you're just starting out and don't know where to begin, or even if you have a handbag line and just need some strategic direction, the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass is just for you. So let's get started and you will be the creator of the next it bag. Join me, Emily Blumenthal, with the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass.
Right. I guess for you, that must have been a combination of excitement, relief, terror, and oh, damn, now what?
In terms of her stepping aside, or yeah, probably a little bit of all that. I didn't have the oh, damn, now what? But I definitely had, all the other things, because, the things she was good at were things I'm not good at. Right. And so, we had to bring people in to be good at the things that she was good at. So,
You're making something domestically, not even so much domestically, it's like, backdoor. How did you determine your pricing? Because, when you're saying like, oh, to sell a bag, we need to sell this many bags. And it's like, okay, you want to take a salary. You don't want to be one of those businesses where it's like, that's cute, it covers my expenses. Like,
exactly.
no, I want to hire people. I want to employ people. How did you determine your pricing and say, this might be too expensive because it's so, how do we get people to see the value in our bags that are made from something? And there's such a whole story to tell, but we have such a short span of time to educate the customer on the backstory. And it's like, yes, brands with fans, once we know they know, then we've sold them. But that 80% of your business is controlled by 20% of your customers, but yet you're starting with such a small percentage. How did you go through all that to grow the brand and also come to terms with your pricing?
Well, I did everything I didn't learn in school. So, and probably everything you wouldn't teach. Like I did, it was unconventional. But for me, because we're in Maine and this is the home of the LL Bean tote bag, I didn't want to compete with them. I could never pretend to compete with them. So the first thing I did is doubled the price to what they sold. So,
Wow.
and brave, stupid, who knows, right? But I didn't ever have to be compared to them because we're not them. We couldn't create, on the scale. We're limited to we're manufacturing constricted to the number of sales that we had in our raw inventory or raw materials and inventory. So I was like, well, we're not going to compete with beans. Let's just double the price and immediately set us apart.
Wow. What made you say double? like 20%, 30%? Like, were you like, that's it, we're just going double the end?
Because I thought it was still a reasonable price for a handmade product where each one is uniquely different. And I didn't want to be anywhere near them. And not that I was, it was so obnoxious for me to even think that we weren't. We were
I
like this
love it.
tiny
I love
startup
it.
bubble. And they're like giant L.L.Bean. And I love that company. You know, I grew up here. So I was like, we're just not gonna be just double. Right. And so we started kind of selling small locally here and on an island where my family, vacations. And I remember I would show up on the ferry with, handfuls of the bags we made this week. And the women would meet me at the dock and say, I want these. Right. And so that was a little bit of an indication. And then we got lucky.
Right.
Then we got lucky with some really good press. The Daily Candy picked us up and they were huge. Right.
Oh
And
my God.
so when Daily
Daily
Candy picked us
Candy?
up,
Oh
yeah,
my
remember that?
God.
So cool, right?
That's a throwback. Holy crap.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Wow.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
when they
Yes.
picked us up, it was the first time that our bags, kind of left the state of Maine in my eyes. So
Right. So how, I mean, Daily Candy, that is a throwback in itself. How to grow beyond, like, okay, Daily Candy may have put you on the map per se, but still being such a local brand. And again, our listeners, like what I always say, like I preach, be a hometown hero before you ever become anything else. It is
yes.
so important to know your customer, know your audience, and then get that immediate feedback. And people get so obsessed with being in major cities. And then when I always say, check the zip codes, who is buying your bags probably isn't who you really think they are. So, how are you able to say, okay, I'm a hotshot in Maine. I know my people love it. How can I keep people buying this product? And also to make sure that your product isn't perceived as seasonal.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I never really thought we were a hot shot in Maine, but I definitely thought more people knew us than they did, and
Right.
so people say, what do you
That's
do?
good.
I work at Sea Bags. They say, what's that? No way. Right. And so, but to your point of your customers not really who you think they are, I mistakenly thought our customers were going to be sailors. Like everyone was going to be a sailor that bought our bags. Well, sailors notoriously don't spend the money on things like that. So they would go for the 𝐿.L.Bean tote at half the price. And so I was wrong on that. And then, we quickly found out, that our buyers were women that appreciated handmade and the unique design in every single tote because of the sale that it came from. But our customer base is very much East Coast.
Interesting. Interesting. Considering that it is East Coast, were you like, okay, we're a brand, we need to do trade shows or we need to do pop-ups? How did you take that into consideration? Because it's okay being East Coast, that we always think bigger for our brands, we think bigger for us, we think bigger for our employees. How did you roll this out? Because there's so many mistakes that we make as new brands, new business owners, new designers. And I deal with this all the time where like a designer is positioned to do a fashion show in New York or to do a trade show in Paris. And I always ask them, what's your why? Are you doing the show in Paris because someone asked you and it's cool and it's exciting? Are you doing it because you hope to get European sales? Is your why for doing a fashion show in New York because you're excited, you feel honored, you like the little buzz and the massage? Or is it you really hope people pay in under 30 seconds and that's it? Because press today is very, very different than the Daily Candy days of having a hot email list. So, I mean, if only it was so simple now, we didn't even realize that was the case. How do you handle all of that in terms of growth and reaching all these people, at least on a wholesale level?
So it's funny, and I'm glad you asked that. So my background was business to business. So I was more comfortable going to a trade show, right? Trade shows felt better for me. So, we did designers and agents. We said, we're going to do a boat show, we're going to do a fashion show, and we're going to try a gift show, right? To just kind of figure out where we were. But the business to business piece was my comfort zone. And I didn't have enough money to really invest in selling direct to the consumer at that point. So that was the best way to get our products in front of it. So, we had some early big collaborations. We had Sperry Top Cider, we had Tommy Bahama, we had J. Crew, right? And so those helped get our names out there, free people early on. So that helped get the product out there and the story out there. But again, mostly it's because that was my comfort zone. It wasn't the most profitable as, direct to the consumer, but it definitely gave a little bit notoriety and easier. So
I mean, I think people tend to forget, like, don't sleep on boutiques. Like, yes, you're not getting the full markup as you would if you were selling D2C, but that's your publicity. Like, that is your write-off into marketing. That is what, like, people tend to forget, and they get so obsessed with, like, I D2C and I think it's going to erode my business. Honey bunny, no, you need it. You need people to buy from you at boutiques to see it in the wild before you're able to start really getting that kind of traction. It's one of those things people tend to, I think, overlook to help grow their brand.
And for us, those good boutiques have repeat customers that want to see what's new and what they have. And so they do the marketing for us. Our struggle was because we were doing our own manufacturing, we could make one of any design, right? But when it came to, okay, we're going to give you 1,000 units of this particular bag, we had to figure out how to scale that, right? Each bag is uniquely different because of the sail that it came from. It's going to have different stitches and grommets and things that sailors had, but it had to have the same amazing quality and the same topical design on the front of it. So we had to figure out, like, after our daily candy of, 1,000 orders of one, how do you do one order of 1,000 of the same thing? So,
Right.
scaling with manufacturing is a whole different thing. And I didn't have any background in any of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And can I just ask you, just out of curiosity, how were you able, again, you get to a certain point or a certain age and you're like, oh God, kill me now, social media. Oh, I need to be camera front facing, especially when you're saying your comfort zone is not so much behind the scenes because you don't have problem hustling and selling, but to go front facing. I'm Beth from Sea Bags. Here's our story. Here we are on the dock. Like, how were you able to integrate all that in, knowing that it was such a necessity for building the brand?
Yeah, Emily, it's still a struggle. I mean, talk about imposter syndrome. When Lisa came to us and said, "Hey, I want you to meet
Oh my God,
Emily,"
yes.
I literally was like, "You're kidding. We don't belong in, like, we can't fit into that, right?" And so it's a hard thing for me, but what I believe in more than anything is, my 200 employees, my leadership team that is so good at what they do, and our product. I would put quality up against anything, right? So I believe in the product so much. We're saving, so many sales from the landfill every year. We're, recycling, we're repurposing, and it's about progress, not perfection for us every single year. So I can talk about business all day long, but if I'm going to talk about myself, it's not a comfort zone, right? So I guess it's really like staying authentic to our brand, and we don't ever try to be anything that we're not. We don't tell a story unless it's a real story. Authenticity is absolutely huge for us, and it has to be that way for myself too. Lisa
Was it
pushes
a
me a
struggle?
little bit out of my comfort zone though.
Was it a struggle to start? Were you like, oh my God, it's just, even for me personally, I still like struggle with it in terms of, like, okay, I spend more time looking at myself and thinking about the story, and then I end up spending 5 hours doing one thing over and over. I know, but
Yeah.
doing all of that, but it really becomes something that you're like, okay, stay on my brand. This is something I put my whole life into. I could do this. I could do this.
So it's funny because early on you said, be a rock star in your own neighborhood, right? In your state. Well, when I tried to convince people locally that we were going to create our own cut and sew brand here, nobody knew what we were talking about. And nobody took me seriously. So I would go to the state, and I would go to the Manufacturers Association. They'd look at me and they all thought we had this, your grandmother's stitch and bitch circle every day, right? A bunch of
Like, that's cute.
right?
Yeah.
Or, a bunch of old ladies coming in and making tote bags on their day, to make the day pass. And so the hardest part originally was getting people locally to take me seriously. And, also this many years later, we're very well known for what we do. And, when people gratefully and amazingly refer to us as an iconic Maine brand, because that's what we set out to do. And there is no greater compliment.
That is, yeah, that is, I almost called you Lee. That is, I think, really poetic. And I think that is probably a perfect way for us to tie this up, wrap this up, because to know, and it's just so funny that here you are, you're thinking like you want to make a difference locally, and yet you need to convince everybody from the back end to the front end. And all you want to do is make a difference. And here you are, a female business owner wanting to hire local people, bring industry back to Maine, bring a product that's saving it from the landfill, and then taking something that's really special and unique and figuring out a way to how to dupe the same bag as, hey, I didn't order this, I ordered that. And you're like, it is the same. That's what you're getting. That's what we are. We're unique and we're for everyone. And it might not be the same, but that's okay. That's what we represent.
Yeah, I think it's the best way, staying authentic is trying to stay in our lane and not be what we're not, and really staying true to, our core values and, and our guidelines, rather than try to be everything for everyone, and because we can't be, right? So.
Exactly. Beth, thank you, thank you, thank you. How can we find you, follow you, and learn more and get our hands on a sea bag from Maine?
Oh, thank you so much. So our website is seabags.com. All of our social media is on the website. And, we have 31 stores up and down the East Coast and 2 in Michigan. So
amazing. And that's SEABAGS.com.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. What a thrill to meet you.
Okay, thank
You're
you,
a rock
thank you.
star.
Well, this is what I do. And listen, I'm not doing my job if I don't get to talk to people like you. So I just appreciate your time and, everything you do, because listen, to start a handbag and start a brand. And, as we said, it's not a linear journey. This is not for the faint of heart. It really, really isn't. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, like, an exciting moment is to move to a place where you don't need to be surrounded by samples and product all day long. I'm like, oh, I finally have a closet to put them in. I finally have a merchandising drawer. I finally have a door that I can close to, because everything started on such a granular level that to take a bag that you saw, turn it into something that creates lives on a local level. I mean, that's really something to celebrate. So if I'm able to share that message, then for me, it's just as important. So thank you, Beth, for everything. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review and follow us on every single platform at Handbag Designer. Thanks so much. See you next time.